Hello. Where's my pen? Oh. It's right here. Hello. Congrats. Thank you, Falco. Fairy Drago Melon. Oh, Drago. I hear you're tearing it up in Odyssey. My sources are telling me. It has not been 2 years, no. The 2-year anniversary, which I'm not really gonna celebrate, is sometime in July. Sometime in July. We just celebrate the episode numbers. It's a lot easier. 'Cause I don't even remember the exact date. I could probably look it up. This started. Remember watching the Popcast in middle school? The Popcast itself isn't that crazy old. I don't think, at least. I'm sure it's not. Thank you, freshest weeb. Won't be much gaming today. It's talking about gaming. In about 4 minutes or so. Thank you for calling that out. I just went on a curse-filled rant right there. It's a good thing I was muted there. No, am I taking this pop gun out tonight? When you're married, every day is Valentine's Day. We don't go out just because corporate America tells us we need to spend money on each other. So no, I don't think we're doing it. I don't think we're doing anything out of the ordinary today, specifically. And we're both off work. We were supposed to be on vacation today. But our vacation plan's canceled, so we're just having a staycation. So here's that. We're gonna clean the house for Valentine's Day. That's actually what we're... Welcome to being 30, kids. It's fun, isn't it? I didn't think that I would get to this point, honestly. If I'm being real, I didn't really know what to expect when I did that first episode. And honestly, I haven't gone back and listened to the first episode in a long time. Like, I listened back to it after I did it, but after, like, I started doing, like, figuring out how I should be doing the podcast and, like, and getting into the rhythm that I'm in right now, I have yet to go back and look at episode 1 and seen how much I've grown since then. And it's part of me doesn't really care to an extent because I am who I am today, and I like where the Popcast is at today. I don't need to go back and look at it. And I didn't want to do a big segment talking about what it means to be what it's like to do 100 episodes of this or reminisce or anything like that. We'll save that for like whatever the final episode of the podcast is, whenever I guess somebody drops a twit longer that gets me exposed for being the jackass that I really am. I don't know. But 100 episodes, it's nice. I'm glad we got to this point. And I didn't want to spend too much time talking about it because the reason the podcast has been so successful or enjoyable or memeable for the past year and a half is because of you guys. I spent a good chunk of these episodes talking about you and all the things you guys do in your tournaments and in your leagues and all the accomplishments you guys have pulled off in this game. I spent most of that time talking about you. And I think you guys enjoyed that and appreciated that because there wasn't a lot of people talking about low-level Splatoon back in the day. And now low-level is just the best part of competitive Splatoons. So much so that when people get banned from it, they wish they could go back. They wish they could get unbanned and come back in and be a part of all this great stuff that's going on here. So thank you for being a part of the past 100 episodes here and for helping making the Popcast what it is today. And you know, the number one fan of the Popcast, it's not Riley, it's me. I enjoy listening to this just as much, if not more, than all of you. And as long as I enjoy doing that, then I'm going to keep doing these things. And the fact that you guys enjoy it as well is just kind of a nice added bonus. So thank you for that, I guess. With that being said, for the 100th time, hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it be live or VOD, Twitch or YouTube, or Spotify, while you're sharing your greatest low ink moments on the tweet I put out yesterday, cursing the person who invented Valentine's Day because you ain't got no boo, thinking up as many Starbust jokes that you possibly can thanks to Nintendo's inability to be able to spell words correctly. Whatever it is that you're doing right now, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Unless I don't. What a perfect end to the Splat Ladder tournament series. The prize that the final four teams got was a jersey with their name, their team name, and their IGN on the back of it. Perfect, absolutely perfect. Except for Starburst, which got Starbust, and Arctic Moon, which got Arctic Moon. It's it should be expected at this point that something with the Nintendo Tournament Series from last year should go wrong. Like, it would have been more surprising if those jerseys came out and they were 100% correct, right? Like, you should expect something to go wrong here because every single step Nintendo has taken in that United States tournament just so happened to be stepping into a piece of dog crap. It's unbelievable at this point. Starbust. That is, I mean, there's so much you can do with that. And the cheap thing to do as a commentator would be to make that kind of joke the next time you commentate them. And I promise you this, the next time I'm commentating Starburst, I will not make a Starbust joke, even though it's so easy. It's so easy. There's so much you can work with right there. It's unbelievable. But man, to sit here and say Nintendo shot themselves in the foot yet again isn't fair. It's not fair to say that. If they tried to shoot themselves in the foot at this point, they would have missed. And it's just, man. Thank you, Nintendo. And please this has got to be it, right? There's nothing else that could possibly happen that would tie back into that Nintendo Series tournament. It's over at this point, unless there's some sort of secret prize that has yet to be revealed. News of some upcoming tournaments may be of interest to the casual listener of the podcast. It's Low Ink Week. Make sure you guys register and sign up for Low Ink. Do it now. Do it right now. What else are you doing? I mean, you can still watch me and register for Low Ink at the same time, right? In fact, here we go. If you register for Low Ink during the Popcast right now, you will get a 50% discount on the Pop Gun merch store whenever that opens up. Probably never, because I don't want any kind of Pop Gun merch floating around. But if that ever becomes a thing and you sign up for Low Ink during the Popcast today, I'll give you 50% off. How about that? Empty promises are what we're all about here on the Popcast. Preview will be Friday. Top 10 teams. I think I already got a good idea of what the top 10 is going to look like, and who's going to be completely cursed by getting the number one spot right there that I'm going to give them. Maybe I should just not announce who the number one team is going to be. Maybe we'll just do like 2 through 10, something like that. Maybe that'll be a little bit more effective. But y'all need to register. Make sure you get your friends to register as well. Low Ink staff members are standing by to verify your team. And I'm off work all week this week, so I'm looking forward to DMing you guys to tell you that you can't play, and then you guys have arguments with me like that's like I'm the one who decided who does and doesn't play. in these tournaments. Like, it wasn't a group decision, and I'm not just the messenger. Like, oh man, Pop Gun banned my team. Did I really? Was it me individually? Come on now. Always love DMing you idiots during Low Ink Week and having those stupid arguments with you guys. Lots of fun. Today, we are going to chat with Emil. Since we had Emil on for the 50th episode, it makes sense to have them back on for the 100th. Because that was a really fun conversation last time. A really eye-opening conversation, honestly. So we're kind of looking forward to that again. Talking about Looty stuff, Splat 3 stuff, Chugga Conroy stuff, maybe. I really need to look into that because everyone was saying that was a huge deal, and I don't know anything about Chugga Conroy until yesterday. I said we were going to look at SAC. I looked at the SAC standings. They're not updated on the website yet. Like, it's got the scores put in, but if you look at like the actual like ranking 1 through whatever, like it doesn't have the third results in just yet. So, and I probably don't have time to fit that in anyways with what I got going on today. So instead, I'm just going to wait till Friday. We're probably going to do like the Splat 3 or the SAC stuff on Friday with the Low Ink preview, where I'm basically just going to break down, like, here's what each team needs to do in qualifier number 4 to make the final tournament of the SAC season. So SAC stuff's going to be Friday, and we don't have time for it today, and it's not even updated. At least when I saw, like, 30 minutes ago. I will say the SAC website's pretty nice. It's much better than just using a Discord. Also, a weekly recap. And no, we're not talking about the worst event ever. I looked into that briefly. And no, we're not talking about that. But first, Lsl had an invitational a couple of days ago, seemingly out of nowhere. I remember talking last episode on the Popcast and being like, we're due for a little Squid League tournament at some point, aren't we? I haven't seen anything announced. And then somebody in chat was like, oh, they just announced it just now. There's going to be a tournament coming up in a couple of weeks. I was like, okay, cool. That's awesome. I went back and looked at it, and it was something like invitational this weekend and a turf war tournament a couple of weekends after that. And I was like, okay, cool. That's cool. They're doing 2 tournaments at the same time. One's an invitational. The other one's a kind of a experiment. It looks like they're trying to do a ladder tournament yet again, this time focusing more on turf war and whatever. I was like, okay, cool. And then it became, we're doing turf war in 2 days from now. The turf war ladder and the invitational on the same day. And it was like, what? What? And nobody, I think, Marine Melody signed up for the Turf War tournament. And I think they tweeted out that they were the winners of it too, since they're the only team to sign up for it. That was weird. I don't understand. There might have been something. They might have been going up against a SAC or something like that, and they thought, oh well, let's just do it this weekend. But the SAC was going on this weekend too, so I don't know. I don't know what went on with that Turf War thing. It was weird and seemed kind of last minute, but who cares? It's something else happened with LSL that is much more interesting and should be talked about, which is why we're going to talk about it. The Lsl Invitational, the second invitational that took place from the Little Squid League organizers that you all know and love. The participants in Little Squid League 12: Squid Killers, Kraken United, Up the Ante, Inc., Bashers, Intimidation Factor, Illumini, Legato, Demon Hunters, CIA, good to see the agents back there, Inkling Technology at Purdue, or Patty if you say that backwards, Vaporwave, and the Wiggly Phantoms playing in their 20th tournament since disbanding. Congratulations, Wiggly Phantoms, for being true Phantoms and never really dying and going off into the night. So there's your 12 teams played in this invitational. I'm assuming this was planned like a couple of months in advance or so. Just because I know firsthand, how difficult it is to run an invitational by watching JPEG slowly pull his hair out trying to run High Ink all the time. I remember the first meetings we had for High Ink 2 was, I think, in October, like early October, before we had it in actually December. So a lot of planning kind of goes into making these invitationals what they are. And I wasn't even involved in High Ink 1, and I know for a fact High Ink 1 was way crazy more stressful to work on than anything else. By the way, this is a, because I love JPEG, and you guys do too, do not mention the phrase High Ink 3. That's like Michelangelo painting the cathedral, and then somebody's just looking up at it and being like, so when are you making the next one? Just appreciate what you got, bro. It was difficult to do that. So yeah, invitationals suck, but they're great. The audience, I love watching invitationals, especially if you can get the teams right, which for the most part seems like a Little Squid League did. Now, when you have 12 or 16 teams, you're going to have teams that are good and teams that are, well, not at the same level as the teams that are like on the upper echelon. You're going to have skill gap. It's hard to find 12 teams that are available at the same time on the same day that are right at the same skill level as each other and also fit the narrative of what you're trying to do. This one seemed kind of like past LSL champions and like close teams who got really close. I think everyone here made a grand finals at some point. Of these teams. I know CIA won, Legato won. I don't know about Lumini. I can't remember off the top of my head. I know ITAP finished in second place against, who was that? Hardcore Noobs many years, moons ago. And of course, Wiggly Phantoms won as well. I think Ink Bashers finished in second place to, I want to say Demon Hunters. I could be wrong there. But all these teams are familiar with, they have history with LSL, so it makes sense to have them in here. Some of the teams that I do want to talk about here, I guess I kind of skipped ahead. First off, the format groups into single limb, which is great. And every team made the single limb top cut, which is how invitationals should be, right? You shouldn't invite a team out to have them get knocked out early in a group or Swiss stage or something like that. And I love the fact that groups, that like the group stage here or like the Swiss stage we did in High Ink 2, they're just for seeding for the top cut thing, which is great because you have like all these matches in the beginning where you can lose all of your matches, but you're still going to be like, that's just the warm up for the actual tournament. And it gives you, it takes less pressure off if you win or lose in those kind of stages. So just like a thing there that they got right. Group stage, the group of death here. I guess I could show like the actual group here. The group of death here obviously was Group B because you had the three-way tie here. ITAP knocking off Legato, Ink Bashers probably knocking off ITAP, and Legato beating the Ink Bashers, and then they'll get revenge. And then Vaporwave, poor Vaporwave here, like, please stop the hurt. But again, it doesn't really matter. If you make a group of death, it doesn't really matter because everybody makes top cut anyways. So, yeah, you might be frustrated that, like, oh, why can't Kraken United be in here instead of me or something like that? You can just be like, well, we all make top cut, and it doesn't really matter. Legato still got, like, the number one seed here. I don't know tiebreakers with group stage. I'm sure somebody else does. Maybe it makes more sense than Swiss's tiebreaker. I don't know. But sometimes it just feels like it just kind of goes off of whatever. Vaporwave had to play 3v4 versus ITAP. Wow. Vaporwave still should have won that one. ITAP sucks. JK, I love you guys. But yeah, you kind of look at the top cut here, and we'll expand this here. And we'll talk about a couple of teams that I want to mention here. First off, being ITAP. Being the only team that was able to beat Legato all day long. But it was a best of 3 pre-set map list. Yes, But you also look at what Legato did. Nobody was able to even take 2 games off of them at any point. Sometimes I think about Ludi, how it's best of 9. And I think about, man, if it was a best of 3 set, we would have beaten a couple of those teams that beat us in the best of 9. It's a little bit different when you have to take 5 games away from someone as opposed to just 2. But still, nobody else was able to even take 2 games, even when there was more opportunities to beat them all day long, which is what ITAP was able to do. So credit to them for that. Ultimately losing to Ink Bashers, finished in 2nd place right here. It's kind of weird because you always think who's the true number 3 team if Ink Bashers got taken to game 5 against ITAP, but Demon Hunters only took them to game 4. It's all about matchups and perspective and situations like that. So it's not to say, oh, ITAP got eliminated round 2, they're bad. No, they're not. They're a really strong team, as they've always been. I saw them tweeted out some frustration, but who cares? ITAP's still a really strong team. And we're seeing some teams starting to pop off in SAC. The ITAP's time is just right around the corner, especially with SAC being announced to have a couple more seasons before the end of this year. ITAP's time will come. Demon Hunters. When I saw the list of teams that were signed up for this tournament, initially I just thought, oh, Demon Hunters just wins this, right? They just stomped this. Remember when Demon Hunters won LSL 13, they went undefeated. They did not lose a single game on all of LSL 13, which kind of shows you oh, crap, these guys are a little bit too good. A Rising Matrix moment, except they didn't lose a single game. Rising Matrix lost 1 game in that low wing. And Demon Hunters got on to be Div 4, and they didn't make playoffs in Div 4, but I think they went 3-2 in their group, including beating ITAP. I believe 5-4 to close out that set. Their Ludi group there. But still, Demon Hunters, I was yeah, these guys they just win this. I mean, some of the teams they 3-0'd in that LSL 13. Ink Bashers, I think they might have played Legato as well, are here, and they beat them then. Now, again, LSL 13 was back in July. So who you were 7 months ago, 6 months ago, is not who you are today. Clearly, understandably so. But still, Demon Hunters being the hunters that they are, I just thought, yeah, these guys they just win this tournament. They did fine, finished in 4th place here, but some of these other teams have clearly just kind of caught up to them over the course of the past 6 months or so. Kraken United finished in 3rd place. Only loss coming to Legato, which is justifiable. I feel like there's a little bit of a rivalry between these two teams, a friendly one. It's because they see each other every now and then in low ink, and close sets against each other. Kraken United easily taking 3rd place here, or maybe it wasn't easy. We didn't see the set, but still got a 3-0 over Demon Hunters anyways. Kraken United proving that they are a top 3 team in every low ink that they're going to sign up in going forward, because they're good. They're just that good. Their finish here, their 3rd place finish here, kind of justifies that as well. Here's one thing I want to point out. With a couple of these teams making grand finals that are low ink eligible, and the some of the teams that are banned from low ink not finishing in the top 3. What does that mean? Because we get this kind of narrative said a lot. It's oh, well, we're banned from low ink, but we're losing to low ink teams. Why are we banned from low ink? Results are fact. What the results you guys get leading up to you being banned from low ink? Could you make the same argument to say you should be unbanned if you do not crazy good in the future against other teams? No, I don't. I hate the idea, and we do this from time to time, but me personally, I just hate the idea of letting teams back into low ink just because they have a few bad results against low ink teams. I don't see this as a negative towards those other teams from the low ink band teams. I see it more as a positive for Ink Bashers and Legato and Kraken United. It could just be that those teams are really good too. It doesn't really have to be a negative against teams that are banned from low ink. Speaking of ink bashers, what a heck of a tournament these guys had. I feel like I don't give ink bashers enough credit. I feel like I don't, and they've demanded it at this point. I mean, I know they've made a couple of alpha brackets, and they were like pain bashers in the last low ink or something like that. And then I found out why. It's because they run missiles up the wazoo. That is kind of painful to play against. It's not unbeatable, obviously, but now they're just the ink bashers yet again. But I feel like we're still kind of underestimating them. I mean, they beat ITAP and Demon Hunters in this tournament, and they got to the grand finals. And yeah, we'll talk about grand finals a bit because I watched it, and a lot of people were, the commentators and the chat were basically critical of almost every single pick that Ink Bashers picked in the counterpick system. They won game one, Splat Zones at Piranha Pit, and then they kept counterpicking maps that people were saying, oh, this is a Legato favored map. Well, okay, at some point, Legato's just going to be favored on any map because they're just good, okay? Like, what you guys sitting here saying, oh, Legato's Ink Bashers should not have picked that because it's Legato favored. Legato's just good. They're going to be favored in a lot of spots. I think people were saying you could have gone to like certain like Hydra favored maps. I mean, yeah, you could say that. You absolutely could say that. But I thought this was smart. I was sitting here watching this live and I was like, I think I understand what Ink Bashers is trying to do here. Because the best of 7 rule set, and it has to be, the rules need to be tinkered a little bit, in my opinion, because we made this mistake. We did 2 low ink in the counterpick. We did 2 counterpick low inks where there were best of 7. The first one was the same format as the other. When you win on a map or mode, it's banned forever. You can't pick that for the rest of the set. The problem with that is with a best of 7, you can get into a scenario to where the other team can only counterpick one mode, one map and mode. You're basically forcing the other team to pick. So let's paint a scenario. You lose game 1, Splat Zones. You lose game 2, Rainmaker. You lose game 3, Tower Control. You win game 4. Now, what can the other team only counterpick against you? Clan Blitz. Well, what if that team's absolutely trash at Clan Blitz? Could you imagine playing Lois in the only situation that you couldn't counterpick? The only thing you could counterpick against Lois is Rainmaker. Like that's who's clearly at the advantage here? The team that's got all the wins or the team that has to make all the counterpicks? It's so difficult. So what you've seen other tournaments do, and what we did for the final tournament that we had a best of 7 grand finals, you can't pick the most recent map and mode that you won on. So if you won on Splat Zones and then you went on Tower Control, you just can't pick Tower Control. You can go back to Splat Zones. So there's no like way that you can back another team into an inescapable corner. And I thought, as I was watching this is what Ink Bashers is doing. They're setting up a path to where, okay, if we lose, we at least force them to not do Rainmaker. We're at least forcing them not to do Tower Control on like maps they want to do. We're setting them up to where they can only pick Splat Zones against us on certain maps. I thought that's what they were doing. And then they made an illegal counterpick that nobody caught, going back to Piranha Pit, even though they won on there and they got to play it out anyways. So maybe that went out the window. I don't know. But the point is, I don't think it really mattered. And I don't think it's fair to like be super critical of teams making counterpicks. I was. When Access Denied pick Rainmaker against Lois, I was critical. I was just like, I don't think I was openly negative at the beginning, but I was like, I don't believe they actually picked this. And then when it was true that they picked it, I was like, all right, Magic, let's see how this works out for them, kind of thing, and they ended up winning. But you knew in the back of your mind, like if they lost that, everybody was just going to go on Twitter and accuse Access Denied of throwing. But you don't know the path that teams are kind of going here with the counterpicks. There's always a method behind the madness, unless there's not. But regardless, I don't think it really mattered. I think you could have put any kind of map up against Legato, and they're just going to be favored. Legato's just really strong. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, the future with Legato is kind of weird here, because you had Slayer announce that they're a free agent. He came back and played in this tournament. I think they just played it just for this tournament, so not sure what they're going to be like going forward. Kipu got a really good result in an SOS playing with a bunch of Div 2 to Div 1 players. So that's something we got to look into. And I'm not really sure about this team's future. I mean, I guess they need a new player, new support player maybe, and they might take the serious route of just like, well, we're just done with low ink and we're just going to cruise going forward or something like that. I don't know. We'll see what Legato's future is. But it doesn't matter for today, because today they are low ink champions. Or not low ink champions. Oh gosh, don't just clip that crap. They are Little Squid League Invitational champions. And that's all that matters for today. So congratulations to them for winning this one. And congratulations to LSL for hosting this event. And getting it in. And getting it done. And let's breeze through today's. And this isn't the 100th time. I only started doing this in like summer of last year. The weekly recap is more of a newer-ish thing. But once again, we're giving you guys the weekly recap. The IPL Direct launched yesterday on Twitter. Breaking, well, maybe not breaking some news, but giving some updated information about about IPL and some transparency of what's going on behind the scenes. SOS discussing being moved to a bi-weekly just because running a weekly tournament sucks. And some new ideas kind of popping up. First off, IPL's thinking about doing a turf war only tournament, trying to draw in some more of the casual crowd, and a pay to play tournament, geared more towards the top level of Splatoon. IPL, everyone's complaining, well, IPL doesn't do enough. Well, we made SAC for mid-level. And then top level's like, well, IPL's not doing enough for us. And it's like, all right, well, we can't do a major every now and then. So it's like, what can we do for high level? I'm curious what people think of the pay-to-play thing. Somebody made the argument that it was like, you're just making this so that you have to put money into a prize pool. And it's like, yeah, that's the whole idea. Who makes these prize pools things? Most of the money is coming out of TO's pockets. So if you guys want large prize pool stuff, we're saying, what if you put the money in there instead of making us pay for it? You're the ones who wants to play in it. I'm curious to see what the feedback for that one is. Go to the tweet, the IPL Splatoon Twitter. There is a form in the description below the YouTube video. Fill that out if you're interested in giving some feedback to that. Because IPL staff would definitely appreciate the feedback that you guys have to get. IPL is a part of all of us. The future of the competitive Splatoon is all of us. The future is IPL. SOS 58 took place this past Wednesday, won by Tempest. Again, kind of dominated their run through this SOS tournament. I don't care. Well, I do care, but the better story here is the team that finished in second place, Sonaria. What the heck happened to these guys? Finishing in second place here, beating Black Magic, Tuki, and Sirius along the way. Whoa! Went from 1-4 in SAC tournament number 2 to finishing in second place in SOS number 58. Keep in mind, we had that conversation a couple of weeks ago about who SAC is for, how like teams are banned from low ink and they're still going to do like decently well in these tournaments, or they might not. Scenario was one of the teams bringing up the point of like, this isn't really a mid-level tournament because there's high-level teams in it. Well, Scenario Basically, what I said was, paraphrasing, get good. Not to them directly, but to any team that feels like they're not doing good in SAC. And Scenario said, okay, we're going to get good. My goodness, did they get good. And I think they made top cut in SAC number 3 as well. So Scenario flipped a switch and said, hey, if this isn't a mid-level tournament, we're just not going to be mid-level anymore. We're just going to go beyond that. Wow, Scenario, it wasn't just a fluke. The fact they did well in SAC proves this is now the standard for them. Yikes. Scenario really popping off there. Campfire finishing in 3rd place because that's where they typically finish in these kinds of tournaments, right? I think they finished 3rd place last SOS as well. I think Campfire might win the award for most consecutive SOSs played. I wonder if there's like a stat for that somewhere. Haverhead was won by Pickup versus Pickup. Boopy, Brush, Skits, Kipu, and Texture making up this roster there. Good to see old Sir Skit representing Destiny Troops with all those morons that I'm sure Sir Skit carried the entire time there. Mako bracket won by Paint Plus. No Lantern bracket. Run directly. Less teams sign up in this SOS than what there was before. This happened like just a few hours after the Nintendo Direct, and I'm genuinely curious if there's just like a little bit of letdown that there wasn't a date released after the Nintendo Direct that caused some people to be like, I'm not playing in SOS, or I'm not going to sign up for it. I'm not really excited for it. Honestly, I was secretly holding out hope that we would get a test fire. Like they were going to announce, because they've done that before, right? Where they've been like, the demo for this game is availably downloaded right now. Like you can just stop the direct and download this demo. So I thought they were going to do like you could just start doing the test fire right now. And if they did that, I wonder if there even was going to be an SOS that day. I wonder if they would just cancel and be like, let's just play this out. But still, enough teams were signed up in it to make 3 brackets. Again, congratulations to Tempest for winning yet another SOS tournament. Paddling Pool 149 took place. Too late. 3-0'd Monkey Knees. Port Raccoon finishing in 3rd place. 14 teams played in this EU-friendly tournament that is going to be celebrating their 150th tournament this week. That is a lot of tournaments. We're complaining about SOS running so much. Paddling Pool and Dappled Productions are like, nah, we're just going to keep cranking out these tournaments like they're nothing else. Hey, I got this week off. Should I play in my first Paddling Pool this time around? Those of you who played in Paddling Pool, is it fun? Is it an enjoyable event to be playing in? Not sure. Maybe you guys should, maybe we'll make a pickup and see what happens. Or maybe I can convince Destiny Troops to take the day off school and we can compete in it. I don't know. Rams overcame an insane missed call where T. Higgins absolutely ripped the face off of Jalen Ramsey for a 75-yard touchdown to beat the Bengals 23-20 in the big game. I don't think you're allowed to say the other phrase if you're doing like a commercial for it or whatever. So, and I'm sure a lot of people in Nintendo the NFL pay attention to the Popcast, but so be it. Hey, I've been a Rams fan since 3rd grade. Happy to see them win. Not going to tweet or dance or do anything about it because I know everyone who follows me doesn't really care. But hey, I'm happy. Even if you're not. And that was the weekly recap. Sponsored by the Wiggly Phantoms. If there's any team that has made more free promotional content for me over the past 100 episodes, it is the Wiggly Phantoms, the proud sponsor of today's episode of the weekly recap. When are the Wigglies coming back? They played in the tournament 2 days ago. They never really left. Well, that's enough talking about a team nobody cares about. Let's start talking to a TO that everybody cares about. So, welcome back into the Popcast. Head to for leagues under the ink and just an all around smart person, unless there's not. Emil, welcome in.
Hello, Popcorn. Thank you for inviting me again today. You know, when you said like a few minutes ago that I came back for the 50th episode, I was like, 50th? I thought it was like a month ago or something. But you're
It,
looking great today.
Thank you. I'm sure you're looking great today as well. Um, but yeah, you were on the 50th. You're on the 100. Can I go ahead and book you for episode 150?
Oh, we'll see if my rates are still the same at that time, but I can try.
Days of the rate. Yeah, the Popcast budget really going to take a big step up in the next 50 episodes. There.
I hope
Uh,
so.
how's uh, how's Ludi? How's Ludi been this week or this past 3 months? I guess.
Ludi, I mean, it's been sort of great. I feel like we're really coming to a steady point now when we're kind of, you know, not getting too many signups where it's not overly like unbearable, but we're getting a good amount every time, and I feel like we've sort of gotten in a rhythm where everyone is enjoying it. Of course, there'll always be the certain groups that don't really finish, or certain matches that are causing some controversy, but I think we're going at a good pace. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Okay. So you say like you like the amount of teams that are signed up a little bit less than what was last season. If Splatoon 3 really takes off, is there like a doomsday scenario where you have like 500 or 600 teams signed up and you just have like a monster? Like, could you do? Is there? Could there be like a cap that you would need to put on a tournament like this?
Well, that's a really good question. To be honest, when we had 100 teams and then suddenly we had like 300, it was already a doomsday scenario for us. And I thought, oh my lord, this is never going to work. But it worked out fine. And I think with all the things that we automate right now, a few bots that we have, I think it should be possible. But I think if we're getting, close to the 1,000, then we should definitely cap it. Splatoon 3 really takes off.
How's
Maybe make the sign up shorter.
make the yeah? That's I don't know. I just think back to 2 seasons ago when it was 48 teams in a lot of those groups, um, versus the 24. I agree. I think the season when you can get it to just 24 probably makes things a little bit more enjoyable for everyone across the board. But then it just creates the more. Well, this team that's really close to me, they're the div above me, and I'm stuck in this div, and I don't know.
Mhm.
But I feel like this season, from a spectator perspective, and probably from the player, was more enjoyable than like the 48 ones.
Yeah, I think so as well. But again, it really depends on the group as well, because the larger you make, Division X, it might be very different from making, Division 6 twice as big, because the team skill, there's a lot more group teams around Division, say, 6 than there are around Division X. So it's hard to sort of get a consistent number of teams in every division. And it still remains a tournament, even if it's not literally every team has an exact equal chance of winning every group, it's still fine because it's still a tournament and it's only a seeding, right?
I think it's gotten closer to that.
Nothing more.
I I think it's gotten a lot closer to that. I mean, and I don't think that's anything you've done. I think that's more so credit to the plus servers. I think more people care about like before bios were like what your div was or what your current div was or what you estimated your div to be if it were updated today. But I think more people care about like what their voting percentage is in a plus server. Do you feel like the plus server has kind of taken pressure off of Ludi divs being like what people use to rank themselves?
Well, yeah, it's definitely become more of a mixture of things. There used to be indeed sort of an unhealthy relationship with us in the community in the past where, well, maybe not unhealthy, but where people would basically just use their div as their exact skill rating. And I feel like nowadays there's a few more. There's a few, solo queue warriors who really like putting their X powers up there. There's a few people who say, their plus server voting percentages or who they voted for, and then there's some people who go by league powers or tournament results, exact teams that they beat in a best of three set. Oh, we took a game of FD win like 4 seasons ago in this tournament. And it's more of a mixture now, which I mean, on the one hand, it's more unhealthy because you can just kind of pick your poison. If you have five different metrics and on one of them you just happen to be very good, you just got to post that one, of course. But if everyone does it sort of consistently, I think having a mixture of these is better than just, the one tournament like Luti, which happens, maybe twice a year ish, 2 to 3 times a year. And that's basically everything.
You kind of brought up DivX. DivX, this is still going on. It was a different format from the other ones. It was just like a groups that was just meant for seeding and then a double limb. Um, do you do you like this DivX, or like in theory if it was playing a little bit quicker, or is this like a oh my god, next year we're just going back to the single limb group top cut kind of thing?
To be honest, Popcorn, I must admit that this season, X Division has been, and I'm not glad to say this, but it might be my favorite format ever.
Ooh.
And that's because I don't think I came up with it. But I like this format because, well, the thing is, Division X is kind of hard to make a good format for because you never know exactly how many teams there are going to be in Division X, because we want to keep the skill, pretty reasonable in Division X. We don't want that to be complete blowouts because the skill level can be quite varied in that region. And so you always need to kind of pick the amount of teams that you're doing, and then based on that, you might need to make a bracket and a format which might be good or not good. But I like this format because every group stage feels important, but not detrimental for losing one. In the past, I mean, I think we had like a season or two ago, we had like the same size groups. Everyone played each other twice, so you got 6 matches. And there it felt like by the fifth or sixth match, if you're already qualified and you were playing, the first seed against fourth seed, nobody really cared about the matches anymore. And you have that like more in Division X with those small groups. And I think this format is nice because you played three group stage matches, and at the end, essentially, well, one of the top two teams is essentially kind of beaten the other team, the bottom two teams, in like an elimination stage, and they go from there. And so um, I like that every match is important and you still get a good amount of matches because obviously you can make the matches very important by just making an entire single elimination tournament, but then it will be over in 3 weeks. So, uh, and you said about the time about teams not playing their matches, and I think that might be the one real problem is that teams can't really schedule as easily for some weeks in advance. You can't really reschedule. And in elimination stages, teams don't really want to take wins. And I think that might be even more true for Division X. In group stage matches, if you've already played 4-1-4 and then, you might take a win against another team and you're like, well, we, might have won anyway, or it might not matter. But in elimination stages, I mean, there's this thing, called honor, which nobody should really care about. But maybe more importantly is that whenever you post your win on Twitter, it'll get far less traction if you just say, "Oh, we won because the opponent forfeited on time" or whatever. You gain far more interaction when you say, "Oh, look, we beat this team 5-4 in the elimination stage." So teams have a very big incentive to really play out their matches to get the most Twitter likes. So I think there's multiple reasons why people want to play out their matches, and that can make it a bit slower for a division like that.
I could do a whole segment about honor and an integrity from the players, because like from like a TO perspective, you shouldn't care at all. You should just like, here's the rule: if they're not here, like if they're not in the lobby by this time, take the free win, get the thing moved on. But from like a player's
Mhm.
perspective, you're right. You're not playing for honor. You're playing for clout to an extent, and you got to be able to say, well, we beat them straight up. But anyways, Starburst and Young Squad. Did you watch that match?
Yeah, it was really good.
Was
I
there
really like that.
really 6,000 people watching that live or something like that?
I think at some point, because Kiva was streaming that, right? I think at some point someone hosted Kiva, some like person who is a bit larger, and not exactly sure, at what point they hosted and at what point they stopped and how many people kept watching and that sort of thing. But I believe was the reason that they Kiva got hosted by another person who had maybe 10,000 views at that point or something, and then they a lot of them sticked around for a bit,
They
stuck
sh-
around.
they probably should have hosted the Rose versus Good Morning match where Rose won 53-47. That would have been
That
a
was an
much
insane set. I remember that one. By game 797, it was just so tight.
just to get a different map in there.
Oh,
um, do you do you care if a team feels like they're underseeded? Like honestly, like do you care if a team like goes on Twitter and be like, "Oh, we got criminally underseeded. We're going to prove the seeding council wrong." Do you take any of that personally?
well, personally, not anymore because I'm not the only one who's seeded anymore. I think in the past, when I was more of a factor in seeding, when I was like probably the main seeder of one of the main seeders, I did sort of take it personally because I felt like, uh, but of course it depends on case because sometimes a team will be like, oh, we're criminally underseeded, and then when you look at the results, they played in one tournament 6 years ago and they went 2-1, and then you can't really do anything about that. But it occasion it happens that you just miss a team and you probably could have seen them, and then it does kind of feel bad. Um, but I don't think there were that many teams that were significantly underseeded this season. I think we did it fairly well. I mean, you talked in the past as well about, uh, if a team is underseeded, that can mean two things. It can mean that we made a mistake and that we misseeded them or underseeded them, but it can also mean that the team grew over the season. That 2 months ago they were just far less good and far less skilled than they are right now. Um, and I'm not sure if I have the same sort of split between them. I think you're more likely to say that maybe the team just grows, and I think it might be a combination. But it still remains that the best team doesn't always win. Teams don't have that many results, and so whenever you seed a team, um, it could be that that was just what they deserved at the moment, and that maybe they could have done better, or they were better, but their results just weren't there. It can be a lot of different factors. And as for teams in Luti that were underseeded, I mean, you kind of have to or concede that the teams that probably won Division 8, won Division 9, that did very well there, probably they were underseeded. But that doesn't mean that we were at fault for that, or that most likely they just didn't have the results, or they just didn't show up at the times when needed. And they also grew a lot. But teams like Mylag Paradise, that Erlich team, the Ninja Turtles, Absolute Zero. Uh, you can't really say that you can really blame us for not knowing who the Ninja Turtles were. Or the Cat Purglers. I do like that name. You're more of a duck person, right? Call it the
Oh,
Popcast.
a what?
The Popcast.
What about the
Or
Popcast?
Poppycast.
Oh, the
Poppycast.
the Poppycast. I do we know who the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are? Because that's who I want
Uh,
to. They're in Div 9 finals. They beat a team that we banned from Low Inc. And they have to be Smurfs, right? Like they have to be.
well, you never know.
You never.
It could be,
They
yeah.
added Master Splinter to their roster in the middle. So that has. These are either like pure casuals who are just like monstrously better than everybody, or it's secretly somebody. I think it's secretly somebody. I mean, it doesn't matter
Could,
honestly, but
I think
still.
it could also just be solo queue warriors who just like saw each other in X rank or like hit each other up and in playing tournaments, or like, oh, let's just join a tournament for fun. I think the only team that you could argue we on the seed and it might have had to known better was Rising Wave in Division 3.
Mm,
But even that, I
yeah,
think there's a fair argument for them, Division 3 as well. But I think if you really look at it, maybe we should have done Division 2 was better for them. But otherwise, I think mostly everything was fine. and was just either growing teams or they just didn't have the results.
If I if I had to recall, I think the problem with Rising Wave was they had like one or two bad tournaments leading up to Ludi.
Hmm.
But then it plays into your mind of like, if you're playing for a div, is it like, oh, we should avoid this tournament because like we have a chance to lose a spot kind of instead of gain one? I don't know. It's weird when you think of. I feel like teams kind of do that too for low ink. It's like, oh, we're like borderline banned from low ink, so let's dodge tournaments so we don't lose that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird concept. Uh, Leading into the next segment, this is a good segue question. Is it fair to say that we've seen the last season of Ludi for Splatoon 2?
I have to think about this question very hard, but the thing is, if we're looking at the timeline, right? So to avoid answering your question very directly with a yes or no, if we look at the timeline, let's say I think everyone needs a break from Luti. I think, doing consecutive Luti seasons, I think everyone goes tired. So let's do a break, maybe do a normal break, like a month or two, and then we'll start like, announcing it like early April. Then signups are open like late April. The tourney starts like early to mid May. Then if we take 10 weeks for Luti seasons, that will mean that sort of the Luti season comes to an end near the early August. And with Splatoon 3 being announced for summer of this year, in my opinion, summer is like June, July, or August. And so if we start a Luti season at the normal time, there is a very decent chance that Splatoon 3 will just come out in the middle of it. And if not Splatoon 3, then a test fire and some other stuff. So I think if Splatoon 3 comes out in the middle of a Looty season, I'm not sure if people will care. You already talked about, certain games being cancelled or certain tournaments being cancelled if Splatoon 3 came out. I think if there are 4 weeks of Looty left to play and Splatoon 3 came out, then I'm not sure if we care. So um, I think either we would need to start Looty in the next few weeks to be sure that it doesn't overlap, which I think might be too early, or we'll likely just do some fluties, which is like the fun version of Looty, right?
That I forgot about Flutie. I mean, did I feel like Flutie is infinitely better than Ludi. I mean, I really liked it as the lead-in tournament for like the seeding tournament kind of for Ludi, because it was kind of like a
Hmm.
test run of like what the seeding council thought, and it was like, oh, good thing Unlucky played in this because they would have been Div 8, but now we realize, oh, you're a Div 4 Div 3 kind of team. Like yeah, I forgot about Flutie, but I feel like Flutie was just is just better in every single way.
Wow. Okay. Well, no, I agree. I think it's very good in a lot of ways. I mean, I appreciate both of them because I also like being able to sort of watch Looty matches and being able to sort of try out for them and train for them and that sort of thing. There's a whole new mechanic which I really like. And I think the groups are also fairly well matched because there's a lot of teams that enter, so you get fairly good groups of fairly well matched teams. But yeah, I think Flutie is a very very good alternative for just something that you could do every few weeks, something like that, and then you sort of get the Looty experience without it. Splatoon 3 coming out in the middle of your tournament. So I think there's a good chance that that'll just be what we'll do for the next few months.
And now I'm thinking about, like, one of the reasons this season lasted so long is just because it ran over holidays and college finals and stuff like that, where you wouldn't get that
Mhm.
if you're to run it like in the spring or summer like you have done in the past. Um, so transitioning to Nintendo stuff. Nintendo is saying summer, and you've already said you think it's like June through August. I it I these people that are on Twitter saying, "Oh, it's coming out in June." You do realize summer starts June 21st, and if they were going to release it on June 21st, they would have just come out and said it at this point. I think
Yeah.
August is I think August is kind of like the ideal like just off the information we have right now, because we still need to do a test fire. Assumingly, we still need to do a test fire. But in your opinion, do you feel like the fact that they're saying summer instead of committing to an official date, do you think that leaves open the door that it could be pushed back to like a fall or even like at the end of the year just because they're committing to a date range right now?
I think I trust Nintendo. I mean they've done things in the past where, I think that was with Breath of the Wild as well, where they came out and said, "Oh, it was at this time," and then it came out a year after it was initially planned. But I feel like they've sort of learned from that, and I also think that because if we take the dates, of the previous Splatoons, Splatoon 1 came out, what, 2015? Splatoon 2 came out
Mm-hmm.
late 2017. So they've had, what, 5 years to make Splatoon 3? I think they've had a fair amount of time to make it. I don't think they're like stuck for time, right? Like you would in a Zelda game where it's really big budget and everything needs to be complete and it needs to churn out really quickly. So I think they've had a fair amount of time. Um, and I think if they say summer at this point, it's definitely going to be the summer. I don't think it's going to be fall. Because also Splatoon 3, from what the trailers seem to me, it seems kind of like Splatoon 2 plus, It doesn't
Yes.
seem that fundamentally different. The graphics seem sort of similar, definitely more similar to, it's not a bigger jump from Splatoon 1 to Splatoon 2, right? It's a little bit more similar. And of course they're gonna have many more things, like more characters and maybe more weapons and the like and stages, but I feel like the investment that you need in terms of time to build this game is not so significant that it'll have to be delayed by another few months from what they've planned right now.
Uh, and I'm not. I'm kind of pessimistic about Splatoon 3. I guess that's just is anybody who's talked to me or listened to me talk about it would maybe agree to that. Um, what if is there when I had you on last time, you kind of mentioned how Nintendo doesn't want to go all in with the esport route because
Yeah.
they don't want parents to like think that they're trying to get kids to like invest their lives into video games. It's just something that kind of complements their lives as like a leisure kind of thing. Is it do you think there's a chance, kind of like how the Smash community just doesn't do anything brawl related unless they illegally mod the game somehow? Do you think there's a chance Splat 3 could be so favored towards casuals, so much emphasis put on Salmon Run or the single player mode, to where it's just not a game that is going to be better competitively than Splatoon 2?
Oh, in a competitive sense. Wow. Well, I haven't really gotten much information on the competitive sense, but I think even Brawl, which is sort of as you mentioned, sort of the flagship for a game that was terrible competitively, that didn't work in a lot of ways, where, you had these like very easy infinite combos like ice climbers and everything was slow and floaty and nothing ever died. And there was tripping and all that sort of thing. Um, Even Brawl was played more than Melee when it came out, for a few years. It wasn't like it replaced Melee. It was just like, oh yeah, there's still a significant amount of people that play Melee, uh, but the resurgence of Melee came mainly after uh, the Smash game after Brawl came out. I think that's Smash 4, right? It's not like, oh, Brawl came out and like a week after nobody played it and everyone went back to Melee, right? It was still a decent competitive community. So I
Right.
think regardless of how Splatoon 3 comes out, there will still be, first of all, Nintendo will host that tournament for Splatoon 3. We've had these European championships, US championships, world championships. I've played in a UK championships. Those will all be for Splatoon 3. And unlike, for Smash, which they don't seem to host any tournaments for, they are hosting tournaments for Splatoon. So I think pretty much regardless of how the game comes out, most people will be starting to play Splatoon 3. And from what it looks pretty good. It doesn't look like it has any major flaws yet. So um, I think by far the most people will just enjoy Splatoon 3 for what it is, rather than sticking to Splatoon 1 or Splatoon 2.
You mentioned the European championships that Nintendo has had. They're the only championships Nintendo's been doing has been North America or more recently just the United States. Um, why does Nintendo hate Europe?
Yeah, I don't know. I always think of that like the Mei where there's like this girl who's like I know this boy who's like having a fun in like a pool, and there's a mother like throwing him in the air. This girl is drowning on the side, and then on the bottom there's like this skeleton in a chair, and it's like Japan is just getting all the free stuff, and then the US is like drowning, and Europe is on the bottom of the bath, just already dead.
And then South
And
America was never conceived at all. They never even existed for Nintendo.
exactly. It's just on the bottom of a sea somewhere with a rock. But yeah, Nintendo, that's kind of the thing with all their games is that uh, they Japan and the US are sort of also the easiest to make tournaments for because in the US, I would say that most people speak English, even though you might not like their accent or whatever, but you can still play a tournament. But in Europe, you can't just make a tournament for Europe because you have to make a tournament for Germany and you have to make one for France. You have to make one for England. You have to make one for the Netherlands. You have to make one for Poland and for Italy and I can go on and name 30 other European countries, but you get the point. And so it's a lot harder to build tournaments there. And it's sort of also the further geographically from Japan. There's travel times. And so it's just a lot harder to make European tournaments. And also the law, I think, is harder there because with maybe cash, I think, it's a lot harder to provide prizes for European tournaments. Um, there's a
Yeah,
lot of reasons that sort of Europe is harder to make tournaments for. So whenever they sort of release a new tournament, they just pilot it first in Japan because or most people who work on Splatoon live in Japan, so that's the easiest. And then the US is sort of easy because it's 300 million people who all speak English mostly, who are just you can make a tournament for. And then is it worth the effort to make it for Europe? Yeah, I guess we might do something for Europe as well. Um, so it's really an order that they're doing, I feel.
yeah. I think the consensus why it's the United States Open and not the North American Open is the prizes, kind of like you alluded to. Like, so Canada doesn't get an opportunity to get a horribly misspelled jersey of their team name, like the United States players do. I guess with Europe that would be even more, like you said, with the laws and stuff, that would be even more of a convoluted mess to make like a prize that fits all and can be shipped
Mhm.
across borders and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, it's just something that's been in my mind. It's like we used to have these regional things, but as more prizes come out, it seems like it's just getting more narrow to just the United States crowd. Which for me, being in the United
Yeah,
States, is pretty
that's
awesome.
awesome.
But for all of you across the pond, maybe not so much.
But
Uh,
also the thing is that Nintendo doesn't really need to make tournaments to sell their stuff. If you, for example, compare, Mario Kart, say another Nintendo. I mean, I know you're a man who likes playing competitive Nintendo games. I've seen you play decently well at some of them. But have you ever heard of a Mario Kart tournament organized by Nintendo? A Mario Kart, championship or videos? They just don't really exist. Even though if you ask anyone on the street under 30, chances are they'll have heard of Mario Kart. They probably have played it. Maybe they have it themselves or have some friends. And it's weird that, for example, if you ask the same thing about Dota or something, probably they haven't ever heard of Dota. Most people haven't. And yet the tournaments that are working for Dota are hundreds of times bigger than those for Mario Kart. And with bigger, I mean they exist at all, which is already very nice. Uh, but that kind of shows that even though a game has pretty much, I would say, like 80% of people know about Mario Kart, there's still no tournaments for them because there's just no real need for some reason, and they'll still sell without them. And I mean, Splatoon 2 is kind of in the middle of that between, Mario Kart and Dota, but still to sell their games, I don't think they really require many tournaments, and so most of it will be fan based.
That's, I mean, yeah, it's they don't need that to sell the games. This makes sense. And like you said with Mario Kart, and there's the amount, the loud voice that people have for Mario Kart is uh, is astonishing. It always annoys me how the trend the past couple of months from Splatoon players has been, I hate Splatoon. I hate this game. Nobody should play it. And then one person will tweet out, I hate that Nintendo's making Splat 3 when Mario Kart isn't getting anything. And then those same Splatoon people that just dogpile on how much they hate Splatoon will attack the Mario Kart person. How dare you say anything negative about Splatoon? It's a well-run franchise. There's so many people that play in it. It's but I don't know. I mean, Mario Kart got the track update, and I guess some people hated that or loved it or whatever. But I mean, yeah, I guess to your point, I don't know of any Nintendo sponsored. I did see like Mario Kart at Genesis. It had like two tables as opposed to like the
Mm-hmm.
500 that were there, Genesis 7. But yeah, that's you're saying their priority was your analogy with Splatoon 3. They don't need to do tournaments to sell their game because they know that's not what's going to sell their game.
Yeah, sort of, yeah. And also, you know, they don't need the publicity of prize money and they don't need the publicity of large events to really do anything. Um, but to be honest, I love watching Mario Kart tournaments. They're some of the best tournaments I think that exist because of some like, it's like poker where it's like a bit of randomness and a bit of skill. Uh, but but I think to have the dream of having Nintendo host them is just a bit far fetched at this point.
Poker, yeah, yeah. That the amount of the amount of randomness is why that thing's not competitive. I'll tell you that right now. Um, do you know who Chugga Conroy is? Or let me ask you this: did you know who Chugga Conroy was a week ago today?
Yes, I
Okay.
can't say I've watched his videos, but oh, maybe one like 15 years ago. But I did recognize the name. Yes,
Um, do you think everyone's making this out to be like the greatest thing to ever happen to competitive Splatoon? Like that there's just going to be a massive influx. Like people have DM'd me, get ready for a big wave of new players coming into Low Inc. Like do you think a well-known Let's Player doing an in-depth Let's Play of Splatoon is going to have a impact on competitive Splatoon?
I think when I heard about it basically yesterday, I think you might be severely underestimating the impact that something like this can have on the competitive community. Now, obviously, these people that will buy the game next week aren't going to enter Low Inc the week after or the month
Mm-hmm.
after because they'll need some time. But there's a few differences between this and other like media things, and that is, first of all, the people that watch Chugga Conroy's videos are not generally people that watch Platoon videos. And that's a major difference because, the Splatoon 2 World Championships, which is probably like the most viewed Splatoon related video online, has like 1 million views. But those will mostly be from Splatoon players anyway who are just looking for it. But if a website like this, or like a video like this, gets 100,000 views or 200,000 views every week or multiple times a
Mm-hmm.
week, that those are all new people who are just seeing it for the first time or maybe getting interested. And do you know how much money, Nintendo spends to make that World Championship happen? That's like hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of pounds, maybe millions to make that happen. And how much does Chugga Conrad do it for? A fraction of that. Um, and we have the same thing, honestly. It is very much analogous to chess, where basically the Queen's Gambit came out like a year ago or so, and everyone at chess community was like, this is kind of, who cares about this? It's just a chess video or a chess series. And suddenly, in like a year, the amount of people playing chess just like doubled or tripled. And it's been such a major boom in that sense. And why it's really good is that it's just a video that people watch that don't normally watch chess. and that can create such a major boom, and there's so many views that I think um, now not all the videos are accurate because I watched one of them in advance and he's kind of saying some shit that doesn't really make sense, but it doesn't matter as long as you get people interested and as long as you get people interested and get people to watch. I think it can really make a major impact, even if of those 2 million views that he'll get, if 1% of them buy Splatoon, that's 20,000 extra players. How many players in the competitive scene do we have? Well, I'll tell you, far less than 20,000. And even if 1% of those enters the competitive scene, that's hundreds of players that just never would have done that otherwise. And most of them will translate into Splatoon 3. And being somewhat of an elitist myself, it's hard sometimes to watch those people like play the game poorly and be like, "Oh, who wants these people?" But but it's just important to have new people, and everyone starts somewhere, and the type of people that join doesn't really matter as long as they enjoy the game, and everyone who is a certain type of person who just enjoys something new and gets to know something new and spends time on it, they might become a major part of our scene. So I'm looking forward to a sizable group of people joining, and I think those videos can definitely help.
The path to becoming an elitist starts somewhere, Emil. I think we can all appreciate that.
Hmm.
Queen's Gambit. That's a good analogy. That's a really good analogy. How it kind of boomed. No, I mean chess was already kind of popular, but it did bring in a whole bunch of new people
Hmm.
to the scene of chess, for sure. Um, okay, but I reserve the right to be pessimistic until otherwise. I need to see
Yeah.
the results, but I can appreciate your take on how this can be a big impact as opposed to things in the past that haven't been. So I
Hmm.
appreciate your take, but I reserve the right to be pessimistic until proven otherwise.
I mean, you never really know, right? Because Splatoon 3 will come out and then a whole bunch of people will come into the scene anyway, and you never really know where they come from, but it's going to be nice, I think.
Go ahead and plug yourself because nobody knows anything about Ludi or Emil.
Yeah, who in the chat has heard of Luti? I can't imagine anyone has. But I am Emil. I started hosting tournaments and playing in tournaments with Mestival, with Nick, like 7 years ago. And I took over Luti a few years ago. And since then, I've been one of the major people hosting Luti uh, for the past few years. Uh, my Twitter is probably the Luti Twitter. I don't have an Instagram or really anything, but I appreciate it if you would join our tournaments that we host, and I promise that you'll have a lot of fun. And I have a lot of fun hosting them, and I hope you will find it fun playing in them.
And we'll see you again in another 50 episodes, right? Like we're just going to keep this tradition going.
Yeah, sure, let's go.
Let's
That'll be
go.
December of next year around, and then we'll talk about what Splatoon 3 has done, and if we'll start another Looty by then.
Oh no, we're gonna when Splatoon 3 cranks out. I'm quitting my day job. I'm just doing this every single day. We're just gonna start. We're just gonna create
And
topics to talk about, and this is gonna become just like a full like gossip show of Splatoon.
to drama, we can talk about the Division 1 finals. That'll be fun.
We could talk about
What?
the Division 2 finals, which is going to go on at some point next year. They're going to be playing Splatoon 3 when the Division 2 finals are coming out. That's what they're stalling for, I'm assuming. So they can get their tournament in with the new game there.
Will you play in my tournament if I host a tournament that's best of three, Splatoon 1, 2, and 3?
Like all 3 games in the same tournament?
Yes.
I could do that. I mean, Destiny Troops could do that, honestly. Um,
Nice.
but you would need, since we're Americans, you're going to need to offer some sort of prize to incentivize me to do it, or have a really
That's
nice
fair.
stream.
Can I have a jacket where I spell your name wrong?
Yeah, that's what I need. A poop gun jacket. Thank you. I'll fight for that for sure. thank, thank you for coming on yet again. It was a good one. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Popcom.
And that was Emil. of the leagues under the ink. We are always smarter after talking with Emil or Emil. Always has good takes on things. Always has a way of viewing things different from my own, which is always a good thing, for sure. And always enjoy it. One of my favorite, and that's the second time we've talked to them. That's one of my favorite people to talk to consistently. Just hearing what Emil has to say about things is always a treat. And I always try to think of good questions to ask to get those great answers out. But there you go. Hey, that's it. 100 episodes in the book. Episode 101. This Friday. Low Ink preview. Sign up for Low Ink. Do it now. Please don't be that guy that waits till Friday. And please don't be, if I have to DM you about something, please don't be a jerk. Just be like, okay. Just be like, okay. Always the best thing to do. That being said, if you'd like to be a part of the podcast in any way, feel free to reach out to me in my socials below. Twitter at Mr_Popgun. TikTok at Mr_Popgun. YouTube at 25Popgun. Twitch at Popgun25. Discord at Popgun. Hashtag 5882. Anchor.fm/Popgun. Let's raid. Chess is all over my Twitter right now. Let's raid somebody who's doing Splatoon. Kiki. See you guys in 4 days. Enjoy your week. Don't do anything stupid. Make sure you get vaccinated. Make sure you wear your mask. Don't die. Please. That would be awesome.